The date is March 29, 1987. The Pontiac Silverdome in Michigan trembles with anticipation. Over 93,000 ardent wrestling fans crowd the arena, their collective breath held in suspension. Wrestlemania 3 isn't just another wrestling event, it's a cultural phenomenon. And amid the electric atmosphere, a singular figure emerges that epitomizes something quintessentially American. Here is Hillbilly Jim, 6 feet, 7 inches, and over 300 pounds of pure, unvarnished authenticity. No manufactured persona, no calculated marketing scheme, just Jim Morris, a man who would become Hillbilly Jim, stepping into the most significant wrestling spotlight of the 1980s. Wearing overalls and sporting a wild beard, he represents something raw and genuine in an era of increasingly choreographed entertainment. This wasn't just a wrestler, this was a narrative, a living, breathing representation of rural American identity, thrust into the glaring lights of professional wrestling's most mainstream moment. At Wrestlemania 3, Hillbilly Jim serves as a symbol of an entire demographic often overlooked by mainstream entertainment. The combatants of this bout seemed mismatched by design. Hillbilly Jim and his miniature allies, the Haiti Kid and Little Beaver, against King Kong Bundy and his own diminutive team. The rules were surgical in their precision. Only midgets could engage with midgets, with the Titans Bundy and Jim relegated to the margins. King Kong Bundy, a 458-pound walking condominium, embodied pure, unrestrained aggression. Hillbilly Jim stood as a rural sentinel, a protective figure representing something deeper than mere physical presence. The match's pivotal moment came when Little Beaver, that pint-sized provocateur, defied all expectations. Facing Bundy, a man whose body weight could obliterate him, he executed a dropkick, not just a move, but a statement of pure, audacious rebellion. Bundy's response was predictably brutal. A body slam, a crushing elbow, violations of the match's delicate social contract. The result was an instant disqualification. But the true victory wasn't in the technical outcome, but in the spirit of resistance. This was performance art exploring power dynamics, where courage was measured not in pounds, but in spirit. Hillbilly Jim's mixed tag team match became a metaphorical landscape where rules were both framework and challenge, where size was merely a variable, not a determinant. In that moment of controlled chaos, wrestling revealed itself as something more than spectacle, a nuanced storytelling form where every movement carried symbolic weight, every interaction a complex dialogue of power and defiance. The journey that brought Hillbilly Jim to this pinnacle is as compelling as the moment itself, a story of transformation, authenticity, and unexpected triumph. Born James Morris on July 5, 1952 in Scottsville, Kentucky, Jim's early life was far removed from the bright lights of professional wrestling. Scottsville, a small rural town nestled in the Appalachian Mountains, shaped him in ways that would later define his wrestling persona. The region, known for its rugged terrain and even more rugged inhabitants, instilled in Jim a sense of resilience that would become his trademark. Growing up in a working-class family, Morris understood hard work intimately. Agricultural labor wasn't an abstract concept, but a daily reality. This early experience would later inform his wrestling character, not as a caricature, but as a genuine representation of a cultural archetype. Yet, professional wrestling wasn't an immediate calling. Like many young men from his region, Jim's initial path seemed destined for manual labor or local employment. Morris discovered his passion for wrestling through the captivating spectacle of Georgia Championship Wrestling. His entry into this world began serendipitously when he crossed paths with Bruce Swayze at the Bowling Green High School gym, where Morris had already earned accolades as an all-state basketball player before becoming a champion weightlifter. Launching his career under his real name, he sharpened his skills in Stu Hart's legendary Stampede Wrestling and various North American promotions. Reinventing himself in the Continental Wrestling Association, Morris adopted the persona of Harley Davidson, a rebellious biker character that cemented his early presence in the Memphis wrestling scene. But the best was still yet to come. Entering the World Wrestling Federation in the mid-1980s, Hillbilly Jim arrived during a transformative period for professional wrestling. Vince McMahon was revolutionizing the industry, turning wrestling from a regional attraction into a national spectacle, and Hillbilly Jim fit perfectly into this new landscape. First appearing as Big Jim, the transformation into Hillbilly Jim wasn't a calculated marketing strategy, but an organic evolution. Instead of creating a stereotypical character, Morris infused the persona with genuine characteristics from his background. The overalls, the beard, the mannerisms, these weren't costumes but extensions of his actual identity. The character resonated because it wasn't contrived. Hillbilly Jim was James Morris, amplified. This approach not only differentiated him from other wrestlers, but also created a lasting connection with fans who saw him as authentic and relatable. His debut was memorable. Unlike many wrestlers who entered with aggressive personas, Jim brought a disarming, folksy charm. He wasn't threatening, he was familiar and affable. Fans saw in him not a performer, but a representation of a genuine American archetype, the good-hearted, hard-working rural individual. Early on, Hillbilly Jim was presented as a fan who had been plucked from the audience to train under Hulk Hogan's guidance. This storyline not only added depth to his character, but also aligned him with the Federation's biggest star at the time. The mentorship of Hogan, a wrestler synonymous with strength and virtue, further solidified Jim's image as a pure and noble competitor. Hillbilly Jim's first major singles victory came on February 18, 1985, at the War to Settle the Score, where he triumphed over René Goulet. Days later, disaster struck when he injured his knee while chasing Johnny V at ringside during a match involving Hulk Hogan and Brutus Beefcake in San Diego. Sidelined for 6 months, Jim remained a presence by managing his newly introduced family members, Uncle Elmer, Cousin Luke, and Cousin Junior, each clad in the same hillbilly-inspired attire. This creative pivot kept his character alive while he recovered from the setback. Upon returning to the ring, Jim frequently joined forces with his family or the legendary André the Giant, creating memorable alliances. He became a staple opponent for the Federation's towering villains of the era, including Big John Studd. Morris also engaged in a brief but colorful feud with Don Muraco and Mr. Fuji, culminating in a series of unconventional tuxedo matches in late 1986, adding a theatrical flair to his repertoire. Hillbilly Jim was crafted as a light-hearted, crowd-pleasing character, steering clear of intense storylines. His entrance was marked by the lively tune "Don't Go Messin' with a Country Boy," which he joyfully danced to alongside his partners, the ring announcer, or even children from the audience. He made his Wrestlemania debut at Wrestlemania 2 on April 7, 1986, competing in the star-studded Battle Royal. But the pinnacle of Jim's visibility came at Wrestlemania 3, as mentioned earlier. Teaming with Haiti Kid and Little Beaver against King Kong Bundy, Little Tokyo, and Lord Littlebrook, Jim represented a spirit of inclusivity and good-natured competition that resonated with fans. While the match itself may not have been a technical masterpiece, its charm lay in its entertainment value. Hillbilly Jim's presence elevated the bout, making it one of the evening's lighter yet memorable moments. For many fans, his genuine enthusiasm and unpretentious demeanor stood in stark contrast to the larger-than-life egos dominating the card. At Survivor Series on November 24, 1988, Hillbilly Jim joined forces with Hulk Hogan, Randy Savage, Hercules, and Koko B. Ware to triumph over Big Boss Man, Akeem, Ted DiBiase, King Haku, and the Red Rooster. Jim's most notable rivalry came with King Kong Bundy, a massive, intimidating wrestler who represented everything Jim was not. Their encounters weren't just matches, but narrative confrontations between different representations of masculinity and wrestling style. Bundy's brute force clashed with Jim's resilience and resourcefulness, creating a compelling storyline that highlighted their contrasting personas. Jim's tag team partnerships, particularly with figures like Uncle Elmer, further cemented his place in wrestling mythology. The camaraderie between Jim and his partners brought humor and heart to the Federation, making their matches fan favorites. In June 1989, Hillbilly Jim stepped in to replace John Studd, who abruptly exited the Federation during a heated rivalry with André the Giant. His final high-profile match came on April 28, 1990, at Saturday night's main event, where he was defeated by Earthquake. Later that year, Jim parted ways with the Federation and retired from wrestling, though he briefly returned in 1991 for house show matches against Colonel Mustafa and the Berserker, offering fans a fleeting encore of his larger-than-life persona. 10 years later, Jim made a nostalgic return at WrestleMania 17 in 2001, competing in the Gimmick Battle Royal and finishing as the runner-up, eliminated by the Iron Sheik. In 2018, his enduring contributions to wrestling were honored with an induction into the Hall of Fame. For fans, Hillbilly Jim represents a bygone era of wrestling, a time when authenticity and character mattered as much as athletic ability. He stands as a reminder that wrestling, at its core, is about connection and storytelling. The date is January 17th, 1991. Operation Desert Storm has just begun, and the world watches as American forces launch their offensive against Iraq. Meanwhile, in the realm of professional wrestling, an unprecedented storyline unfolds, one that will blur the lines between entertainment and reality, patriotism and propaganda, in ways that would both captivate and disturb audiences for years to come. 2 nights later, at the Royal Rumble, Sergeant Slaughter, once wrestling's ultimate American hero, stands in the ring draped in polarizing Iraqi attire. The man who had once embodied the essence of American military pride has turned his back on his country, aligning himself with Iraqi leader Saddam Hussein. It's a moment of perfect theatrical villainy, yet one that would prove dangerously controversial given the real soldiers fighting and dying in the Persian Gulf at that very moment. This audacious angle would culminate at Wrestlemania 7 on March 24, 1991, at the Los Angeles Memorial Sports Arena in front of 16,000 ardent fans. In the main event, Sergeant Slaughter would defend his championship belt against Hulk Hogan. The Federation had to relocate the event from the massive Los Angeles Memorial Coliseum to the smaller sports arena, citing security concerns over Slaughter's controversial character. Whether these concerns were legitimate or a cover for poor ticket sales remains debated to this day. Security was indeed tight that night, with Slaughter requiring genuine protection due to death threats. The match itself was a spectacle of classic wrestling storytelling. Hogan, wrapped in the American flag, versus Slaughter, who had traded his traditional stars and stripes for Iraqi symbols. When Hogan finally prevailed with his legendary leg drop, pinning Slaughter to recapture the championship, the arena erupted. It was more than just a wrestling victory. It was packaged as America's triumph, a symbolic victory during a time of real war. This moment represented both the pinnacle and the most controversial point of Sergeant Slaughter's career. But to understand how wrestling's ultimate patriot became its most reviled traitor, we need to go back to the beginning, to the man behind the character. Robert Rudolph Remus was born in Detroit, Michigan, on August 27, 1948. Remus grew up in Minneapolis, Minnesota, a crucial detail given the city's rich wrestling heritage. The irony of Sergeant Slaughter's military persona would only become apparent years later, for Remus never actually served in the military. In fact, during the Vietnam War, he received several draft deferments and was actively involved in the anti-war movement, participating in protests against the very conflict his future character would claim to have fought in. His journey into professional wrestling began in 1974 in the legendary AWA wrestling territory. Initially performing under his real name, Remus struggled to find a character that truly connected with audiences. It wasn't until 1980, when he joined the WWF, that the Sergeant Slaughter persona began to take shape. The character was a masterpiece of wrestling psychology, a tough-as-nails drill instructor who demanded respect and discipline from both his opponents and the audience. Slaughter's signature moves, including the Cobra Clutch submission hold, became feared finishers in the wrestling world. His catchphrases, delivered in a gravelly voice that seemed to channel R. Lee Ermey from Full Metal Jacket, became instantly recognizable.
And that's an order!
Slaughter engaged in a memorable feud with Bob Backlund in 1980 through 1981. Their technical wrestling classics helped establish Slaughter as more than just a character. He was a legitimate in-ring performer who could hang with the best. Their 1981 match at the Philadelphia Spectrum went to a 60-minute time limit draw and received widespread acclaim from wrestling publications of the era. And then there was the boot camp match against Pat Patterson, which was revolutionary for its time. The stipulation required wrestlers to make their opponent verbally submit, predating the modern I Quit match format. Patterson and Slaughter brawled through the crowd and used the Garden's environment to create a violent spectacle that would influence hardcore wrestling for decades to come. Slaughter emerged victorious after nearly 30 minutes of brutal combat, applying the Cobra Clutch until Patterson finally surrendered. Slaughter's series with the Iron Sheik was also significant. Their 1984 boot camp match at Madison Square Garden wasn't just a match. It was a cultural moment that captured the zeitgeist of Cold War America. The Iron Sheik, fresh off losing the championship to Hulk Hogan, brought intense credibility as a former Olympic wrestler. Their match featured remarkable technical wrestling interspersed with brawling, as Slaughter defended America's honor against the former champion. The finish came when Slaughter countered the camel clutch into his own Cobra Clutch, forcing the Sheik to submit. This match drew one of the largest gates in Garden history for a non-championship match. Slaughter then left the Federation promotion due to a dispute over his G.I. Joe action figure deal, conflicting with Vince McMahon's plans to launch a wrestling action figure line. He returned to the AWA, where he would capture the World Heavyweight Championship from Larry Zbyszko. During this period, Slaughter maintained his patriotic character, even as he feuded with AWA's top stars. His return to the WWF in 1990 would prove to be the most significant and controversial chapter of his career. Initially returning as a hero, the WWF creative team made the bold decision to turn him heel as tensions in the Middle East escalated. Then, on January 19, 1991, Slaughter defeated the Ultimate Warrior for the championship at the Royal Rumble. This victory set up the collision course with Hulk Hogan at Wrestlemania 7. The Iraqi sympathizer storyline was unprecedented in its topicality and risk. Every week on WWF television, Slaughter would appear with his manager, General Adnan, praising Saddam Hussein and denigrating American values. The heat was nuclear. In an era before widespread internet access and social media, many fans believed Slaughter had genuinely turned against his country. Death threats became so serious that he often needed actual security protection at events. Following his loss to Hogan at WrestleMania 7, Slaughter unveiled a surprising new ally, Colonel Mustafa, none other than his former rival, the Iron Sheik. This unexpected alliance fueled an intense months-long feud with Hulk Hogan, culminating in a high-stakes 3-on-2 handicap match at SummerSlam. In a hard-fought battle, Hogan and the Ultimate Warrior ultimately triumphed over the Triangle of Terror, marking a decisive victory in their heated rivalry. Subsequently, Slaughter's character gradually began showing remorse for his actions, and he eventually turned face again. The reformation was complete when he began crying while saluting the American flag, begging for forgiveness from the fans. Throughout the remainder of the 1990s, Slaughter transitioned into various roles within the Federation. He became a commissioner, manager, and occasional wrestler, maintaining his military persona, but now as a respected veteran figure. What makes Slaughter's case particularly fascinating is the dichotomy between character and performer. While Remus created one of wrestling's most memorable military personalities, his own anti-war activism during Vietnam presents a stark contrast. This duality speaks to both the power of wrestling characters and the complex relationships between performers and their on-screen personas. The G.I. Joe connection proved to be both a blessing and a curse for Slaughter's career. In 1985, he became the first professional wrestler to be immortalized as a G.I. Joe action figure. His character appeared in both the animated series and comic books, where he was portrayed as a tough but fair drill instructor who helped train the G.I. Joe team. The G.I. Joe deal was lucrative enough that Slaughter could afford to leave WWF at its national expansion peak. He appeared in animated episodes between 1985 and 1986, voicing his own character and helping to craft storylines that often mirrored his wrestling persona. The action figure became one of the line's best sellers, with multiple variations released. After his controversial championship run in 1991, Slaughter's career entered a fascinating new phase. His redemption angle, where he begged forgiveness from the American people, was punctuated by emotional promos where the typically stoic sergeant broke down in tears while saluting the flag. By 1997, Slaughter had transitioned into the role of WWF Commissioner, a position that showcased his talent for authority figure roles. During the Attitude Era, he became embroiled in memorable segments with D-Generation X, particularly Triple H and Shawn Michaels, who would mock his military bearing and catchphrases. Despite the comedic nature of these segments, Slaughter maintained the gravitas of his character, providing a perfect foil for DX's anti-authority antics. In the 2000s, Slaughter became a valuable ambassador for WWE, appearing at numerous military tribute shows, including tribute to the troops events. His presence lent legitimacy to WWE's support of the armed forces, even though he himself had never served. This complex dynamic, a peace activist who became wrestling's military icon, added layers of intrigue to every appearance. In 2004, Sergeant Slaughter was inducted into the WWE Hall of Fame, a recognition of his significant contributions to professional wrestling. In the end, Sergeant Slaughter remains one of professional wrestling's most complex characters, a figure who embodied American patriotism while being portrayed by a former anti-war activist, a beloved hero who became one of wrestling's most hated villains, and a character whose evolution paralleled wrestling's own journey from simple morality tales to more nuanced storytelling. The era of Sergeant Slaughter represents a time in professional wrestling that we're unlikely to see again, when storylines could generate genuine hatred, when characters could blur the lines between fiction and reality so effectively that they required real-world protection, and when wrestling could still shock audiences with its audacity. He helped pave the way for the complex character work that would define wrestling's later eras, proving that even in a world of sports entertainment, sometimes the most powerful stories are the ones that hit closest to home. The date is March 31st, 1985. Madison Square Garden reverberates with an energy so palpable it borders on the electric. The iconic arena, already steeped in the lore of countless sporting and cultural events, has become the crucible for something larger than life. This is the inaugural Wrestlemania, a groundbreaking fusion of sports and entertainment that transcends the confines of professional wrestling. The air crackles with anticipation, tension coiling like a spring, waiting to unleash. At the heart of this moment stands Big John Studd, a towering figure in every sense. Studd was not merely a participant in wrestling history, but a force that fundamentally reshaped it. For him, this wasn't just a match. It was a definitive cultural moment, a flashpoint that would carve his name into the annals of sports entertainment. The match in question was the $15,000 Body Slam Challenge against André the Giant, and it was no mere wrestling stipulation. This was myth-making in its purest form, a modern-day clash of titans that blurred the lines between sport, spectacle, and something deeply archetypal. Two wrestling colossi stood across from each other, each a symbol of a different kind of dominance. Big John Studd, with his meticulously sculpted 6'10" frame and a demeanor dripping with arrogance that embodied calculated power, a man whose every move seemed as much a strategy as a show of strength. Opposite him stood André the Giant, a man whose very existence seemed to defy the natural order. Standing at 7 feet 4 inches and weighing over 500 pounds, André was less a wrestler and more a phenomenon. His presence alone was enough to silence a crowd. His movements were like tectonic shifts, each step a reminder of the extraordinary. The Body Slam Challenge was Studd's masterstroke. On the surface, it was a simple proposition. Any wrestler who could slam Studd's massive frame would win $15,000. But beneath that simplicity lay a psychological gambit. Week after week, challengers would step forward and fail, each failure adding to Studd's mythos. But to understand the man behind the myth, we must step back and examine the crucible that forged John William Minton into Big John Studd. Born on February 19, 1948 in Butler, Pennsylvania, John Minton grew up in a working-class environment where resilience and hard work were not just virtues, but necessities. Before wrestling, Minton served as a military police officer during the Vietnam War. This experience instilled in him a sense of discipline and purpose that would later define his approach to professional wrestling. Upon returning from service, Minton discovered his calling in the world of wrestling. Under the guidance of the legendary Killer Kowalski, a man known for his own theatrical flair and technical prowess, Minton began his transformation from soldier to showman. In 1972, Minton debuted as the Mighty Minton in the storied Los Angeles territory of NWA Hollywood Wrestling. It was here that he aligned himself with the flamboyant and charismatic superstar Billy Graham, forming a tag team that blended raw power with unparalleled showmanship. Next, Minton entered the Worldwide Wrestling Federation under the ring name Chuck O'Connor, immersing himself in battles against legends like Chief Jay Strongbow and Gorilla Monsoon. On September 12, 1972, he stepped into the spotlight with a bold challenge for the World Heavyweight Championship, testing his mettle against the reigning champion Pedro Morales. Later that month, at the historic showdown at Shea, Minton faced El Olímpico, a clash that ended in controversy as he was disqualified. This tenure with the Federation was brief but impactful, concluding in February 1973, leaving a trail of memorable encounters that hinted at the greatness to come. In 1974, Minton brought his enormous presence to Mid-Atlantic Championship Wrestling. Here, he began to refine his craft, establishing himself as a formidable contender in one of wrestling's most competitive territories. 2 years later, Minton made a dramatic return to the Worldwide Wrestling Federation, stepping into the shadows as the masked Executioner No. 2. Partnering with Executioner No. 1, the duo became known as the Executioners, a menacing force that dominated the tag team scene. On May 11, 1976, they achieved a pivotal victory, defeating Louis Cerdan and Tony Parisi to claim the coveted World Tag Team Championship, cementing their place in wrestling lore. Their reign, however, was as controversial as it was dominant. On October 26, 1976, during a heated title defense, a third executioner, revealed to be Nikolai Volkoff, intervened, prompting the Federation to strip the team of their titles. In a theatrical twist, their manager, the flamboyant Captain Lou Albano, dismissed the incident as an optical illusion, adding another layer of intrigue to the saga. By 1978, now back in mid-Atlantic, Minton reached a significant milestone, forming a powerhouse alliance with the Olympian-turned-wrestler Ken Patera. Together, they captured the prestigious Mid-Atlantic Tag Team Championships, a testament to their seamless blend of strength, strategy, and dominance. In early 1981, Minton set his sights on the ultimate prize, challenging the charismatic Dusty Rhodes for the NWA World Heavyweight Championship. Though these title opportunities did not result in victory, they solidified Minton's reputation as a credible threat in the upper echelon of the wrestling world, further sharpening the skills and persona that would soon define his career. In late 1982, John Minton made a seismic leap to the World Wrestling Federation, where he was aligned with the legendary classy Freddie Blassie as his manager. Under Blassie's guidance, Minton transformed into the fearsome Big John Studd, a gigantic villain who exuded intimidation at every turn. Embracing his role as a monster heel, Studd introduced a chilling new element to his persona, the stretcher gimmick. Each time he entered the ring, he carried a stretcher, a grim promise of the fate awaiting his opponents. Studd didn't just aim to win, he sought to devastate, leaving his adversaries battered and humiliated, carted off in defeat. While Big John Studd emerged as a formidable contender for the World Championship during Bob Backlund's reign, it was his electrifying feud with André the Giant that catapulted him to main event prominence. Standing 7 feet 4 inches and weighing over 520 pounds, André was a living phenomenon, but Studd was determined to challenge that legacy. Studd and Blassie masterminded the infamous Body Slam Challenge, an audacious wager offering $10,000 and later $15,000 to anyone capable of slamming Studd's massive frame. Week after week, competitors stepped forward and failed, reinforcing Studd's claim that he was unslammable. Then, the stakes rose dramatically when André the Giant, wrestling's most iconic colossus, accepted the challenge. In a dramatic confrontation, André appeared poised to achieve the impossible, but just as the crowd roared in anticipation, Blassie struck André from behind, and Studd clung to the ring ropes to avoid the humiliation of being slammed. This incident ignited one of wrestling's most intense rivalries, with their feud dominating 1983. Time and again, André proved Studd's claims false, slamming him with a ferocity that once even caused the entire ring to collapse under the sheer impact. In subsequent clashes, including brutal steel cage matches, André not only slammed Studd, but also used his signature sit-down splash from the top rope to render Studd unconscious, solidifying his dominance. Undeterred, Studd doubled down on his boasts, brazenly proclaiming himself the true giant of wrestling and denying that he had ever been slammed. This defiance added fuel to the fire of their rivalry, ensuring its place as one of the most enduring sagas in wrestling history. By 1984, with his feud with André still raging, Studd turned his sights on the newly crowned Hulk Hogan, challenging the charismatic champion for the World Heavyweight Championship. Hogan, whose unmatched strength was part of his appeal, managed to slam Studd on multiple occasions, further denting Studd's claims. In late 1984, Big John Studd found a pivotal ally in Bobby the Brain Heenan, a master strategist and longtime confidant from their days in the AWA. With Heenan in his corner, Studd's heated rivalry with André the Giant was reignited and soon escalated to unprecedented levels of intensity, evolving into one of the most personal and emotionally charged feuds in professional wrestling. The animosity reached a boiling point during a televised tag team match on Championship Wrestling, where Studd and fellow Heenan family member Ken Patera squared off against André and SD Jones. What began as a contest descended into chaos when Studd and Patera flagrantly ignored the rules, drawing a disqualification. However, the real outrage came after the match. The pair launched a vicious assault on André, immobilizing the Giant and cutting his iconic hair in a shocking act of humiliation. As Vince McMahon and Bruno Sammartino decried the act on commentary, Claiming they were stripping André of his dignity, the moment solidified Studd and Heenan as two of the most despised figures in wrestling. Furious and seeking retribution, André accepted Studd's challenge for the infamous $15,000 body slam challenge, this time under high-stakes conditions set for the inaugural Wrestlemania at Madison Square Garden. The stipulation was clear. If André failed to slam Studd within the time limit, or worse, if Studd managed to slam André would be forced to retire from professional wrestling. The match was not just a clash of titans, but a battle over pride, legacy, and the very concept of dominance. On that historic night, André entered the ring as a man possessed, his determination visible in every step. The match itself was a showcase of André's sheer power and resilience, as he systematically dismantled Studd. In the climactic moment, just shy of the 6-minute mark, André hoisted Studd's towering frame into the air and delivered the body slam heard around the world, securing victory and claiming the $15,000 prize. The crowd erupted as André triumphantly tossed handfuls of cash into the audience, a symbolic gesture of his disdain for Studd's arrogance. But make no mistake, Studd's contributions to wrestling extended far beyond the body slam challenge. In 1986, he participated in the iconic WrestleMania 2 Battle Royal, which featured NFL players like William the Refrigerator Perry. This event showcased Studd's ability to transcend wrestling and become a genuine pop culture figure. The Machine's storyline later that year added another layer to Studd's persona, when André the Giant adopted the masked Giant Machine identity to conceal his health issues. Studd, alongside Heenan and King Kong Bundy, created a compelling narrative filled with intrigue and suspense. By 1988, Studd returned to the WWF as a fan favorite, rejecting Heenan's management and embarking on a new chapter of his career. His victory in the 1989 Royal Rumble was a crowning achievement, a moment of redemption that cemented his place in wrestling history. Wrestling was only one aspect of John Minton's life. Outside the ring, he diversified his pursuits, promoting boxing events, developing a line of workout supplements, and even training future wrestlers like Ron Rice. Yet life had its cruel twists. In 1993, Minton discovered a lump in his armpit, a diagnosis that would lead to a grueling battle with lymphoma. True to his nature, Minton faced this fight with the same tenacity he brought to the wrestling ring. He underwent experimental treatments with success rates as low as 7%, refusing to surrender to the odds. Sadly though, on March 20th, 1995, John Minton passed away, leaving behind a legacy that transcended professional wrestling. He was more than a performer, he was an architect of moments, a creator of memories that resonated far beyond the confines of the ring. For his family, his wife Donna and his children Robert, Janelle and Sean, he was not just a wrestling icon, but a devoted husband and father. Sean, inspired by his father's legacy, would follow in his footsteps, ensuring that the name Minton continued to echo in the wrestling world. In the grand theater of professional wrestling, John Big John Studd Minton was a giant in every sense. His story wasn't merely about who he fought or who he defeated. It was about how he lived, how he inspired, and how he faced life's ultimate challenge with courage and grace. May he rest in peace. The date is April 1st, 1990. The expansive Sky Dome in Toronto is charged with anticipation as Rick Martel makes his entrance for WrestleMania 6. His opponent, the flamboyant Coco B. Ware, awaits in the ring, but Martel's presence commands attention. His physique is impeccable, his movements precise, and his signature arrogance cologne permeates the atmosphere. Within minutes, Martel secures victory with his devastating Boston Crab, a testament to his technical prowess. This moment, while not the main event, exemplified everything that made Rick Martel an integral part of wrestling's golden age: sophistication, skill, and an innate ability to elevate any match he participated in. Yet today, more than 3 decades later, Rick Martel's name remains conspicuously absent from the WWE Hall of Fame. The omission is particularly striking given his contributions to professional wrestling's most transformative era. His journey from Quebec City to worldwide recognition represents one of wrestling's most compelling narratives, marked by triumph, innovation, and ultimately, a complex relationship with the industry's most powerful figure. Born Richard Vigneault on March 18, 1956 in Quebec City, wrestling coursed through his veins from an early age. In the crucible of a wrestling dynasty, Rick Martel's destiny manifested at the tender age of 17 when his brother Michel, himself an established performer in the squared circle, recognized his sibling's prodigious amateur wrestling acumen and thrust him into professional competition as an emergency replacement, a fortuitous baptism by fire that would illuminate Martel's natural predisposition for the craft. Rick Martel's early wrestling career spanned the globe, with championship victories in Canada, New Zealand, Japan, Hawaii, and Puerto Rico. In the United States, his rise began in 1979 with NWA's Pacific Northwest Wrestling, where he became a top star, later showcasing his creative prowess as a booker in Hawaii, shaping compelling matches and storylines. Martel debuted in the World Wrestling Federation in 1980, quickly finding success alongside Tony Garea as they captured the Tag Team Championship twice, defeating the Wild Samoans and later the Moondogs. Though their reigns ended by 1981 and subsequent attempts to reclaim the titles fell short, Martel's partnership with Garea solidified his early prominence before his departure in 1982 when he signed with the American Wrestling Association. 2 years later, Martel captured the World Heavyweight Championship by defeating Jumbo Tsuruta, holding the title for nearly 19 months. During his historic run, he battled legends like Ric Flair and Nick Bockwinkel, showcasing his dynamic style before losing the belt to Stan Hansen in late 1985. The next year, in 1986, Martel returned to the federation and formed the Can-Am Connection with Tom Zenk, a tag team born out of Martel's Montreal-based Lutte Internationale promotion. Their dynamic energy and charisma quickly endeared them to fans, positioning them as strong contenders for the Tag Team Championship. At WrestleMania 3, in front of a record-setting crowd of over 93,000 fans at the Pontiac Silverdome, they secured a memorable victory against Cowboy Bob Orton and the Magnificent Muraco. Then, at the height of the Can-Am Connection's feud with the Islanders, Tom Zenk's departure was woven into the storyline, with the Islanders mocking him as a quitter who abandoned Martel. Martel soon joined forces with Tito Santana, forming the electrifying Strikeforce. Together they captured the tag team titles from the Hart Foundation and held them for 5 months, battling teams like the Islanders and Demolition, before losing at WrestleMania 4 under controversial circumstances involving Mr. Fuji's cane. After suffering storyline injuries at the hands of Demolition, Martel took time off to care for his ailing wife, returning in 1989 to briefly reform Strikeforce with Santana. However, their partnership imploded at WrestleMania 5, when an enraged Martel, after being accidentally struck by Santana, walked out mid-match. The dissolution of Strikeforce marked Martel's most significant character evolution. His turn against Santana wasn't merely a heel turn, it was a complete reinvention. The model Rick Martel became one of wrestling's most uniquely sophisticated villains. Armed with his arrogance cologne and an attitude that perfectly straddled the line between narcissistic and dangerous, Martel created a character that stood out in an era of larger-than-life personalities. His new identity debuted on the grand stage at WrestleMania 6, as mentioned earlier, where he defeated Koko B. Ware with his signature Boston Crab. As the model, Rick Martel's most memorable feud came against Jake the Snake Roberts, ignited when he blinded Roberts with his arrogance cologne on the Brother Love show. Leading the Visionaries to a victory against Roberts' team at Survivor Series, Martel advanced to the grand finale, but was eliminated himself after confrontations with Hulk Hogan and the Ultimate Warrior. He further dominated Roberts in the 1991 Royal Rumble, setting a record by lasting 53 minutes before being ousted by the British Bulldog. However, Roberts exacted revenge at WrestleMania 7, defeating Martel in a blindfold match. In early 1992, Rick Martel feuded with Tatanka, culminating in a loss at WrestleMania 8, while also challenging Bret Hart for the Intercontinental Championship at UK Rampage, without success. That summer, he entered a memorable rivalry with Shawn Michaels, both vying for sensational Sherry's attention. During their clash at SummerSlam, held before a record-breaking 79,000 fans at Wembley Stadium, Michaels and Martel agreed to a pre-match stipulation forbidding strikes to the face. Though their rivalry quickly escalated, both men displayed technical mastery but were more focused on earning sensational Sherry's approval at ringside, leading to theatrical antics such as exposing each other's wrestling tights during pin attempts. The stipulation broke down as they exchanged slaps, prompting Sherry to feign a dramatic feint sparking a comedic tug-of-war over who would carry her backstage. The match ended in a double countout, with Martel dousing Sherry with water to revive her, only for chaos to ensue as Michaels chased Martel away, leaving an enraged and humiliated Sherry screaming in frustration. Martel then reignited his feud with Tatanka by brazenly stealing his sacred eagle feathers, incorporating them into his wardrobe. The rivalry culminated at Survivor Series, where Tatanka defeated Martel once more, reclaiming the cherished feathers. In 1993, Rick Martel transitioned to the lower card, appearing sporadically on shows like All-American Wrestling and Wrestling Challenge. However, he briefly returned to prominence by co-winning a Battle Royal on Monday Night Raw to compete for the vacant Intercontinental Championship, ultimately losing to Razor Ramon. Martel's feuds included a comedic clash with Bastion Booger, where he resorted to spraying Booger with his arrogance cologne. He also participated in the 1993 Survivor Series and the 1994 Royal Rumble. Though scheduled for a 10-man tag team match at Wrestlemania 10, the match was cut for time and later aired on Raw, marking Martel's final in-ring Federation appearance. It was around this time that tensions between Martel and Federation management, particularly Vince McMahon, began to surface. The exact nature of these disagreements remains somewhat shrouded in mystery, but industry insiders have long suggested that compensation disputes played a significant role. Martel spent the next 3 years performing in smaller promotions before debuting for World Championship Wrestling in 1998. While this certainly was not unprecedented during the Monday Night Wars, the move apparently left a bitter taste in McMahon's mouth. Within WCW, Martel quickly entered a feud with Booker T for the World Television Championship. Though he captured the title, his in-ring comeback was abruptly halted at Super Brawl 8 when a botched landing caused severe knee injuries, effectively ending his wrestling career. The alleged animosity from Vince McMahon may very well explain Martel's curious absence from the WWE Hall of Fame. Despite a career that spanned multiple decades and included championships and memorable moments, Martel's name has never been called during the annual induction ceremony. The situation bears striking similarities to other performers who found themselves at odds with McMahon, suggesting that business disputes can overshadow in-ring achievements in the politics of professional wrestling. But make no mistake, Martel's matches were characterized by an attention to detail that set them apart. The way he would sell an opponent's offense, his precise application of holds, and his ability to pace a match to maximize dramatic impact. Every movement served a purpose, every gesture advanced the story, and every exchange built toward a satisfying conclusion. As we reflect on Martel's contributions to professional wrestling, particularly his Federation tenure, the absence of formal recognition becomes increasingly perplexing. His technical excellence influenced a generation of performers. His character work demonstrated the effectiveness of nuanced presentation, and his professionalism set a standard for others to follow. The story of Rick Martel is, in many ways, a microcosm of professional wrestling's complex relationship with its own history. His career reminds us that excellence in the ring, while crucial, is sometimes overshadowed by behind-the-scenes politics. Yet for those who witnessed his performances, who studied his technique, or who simply appreciated the sophistication he brought to professional wrestling, Rick Martel's place in wrestling history is secure, Hall of Fame induction or not. Thank you for watching. The date is March 31st, 1985. Madison Square Garden is brimming with palpable tension and anticipation as Greg the Hammer Valentine makes his way to the ring at the inaugural Wrestlemania. The Intercontinental Champion's bleached blonde hair gleams under the arena lights as he methodically stalks toward the squared circle, his championship belt slung over his shoulder. The crowd's reaction is visceral, a mixture of hatred and begrudging respect for one of the most technically sound wrestlers in the business. His opponent, the Junkyard Dog, awaits him for what would become a historic clash at wrestling's biggest spectacle. Valentine's presence at WrestleMania isn't just another match on the card, it is a testament to his status as one of the Federation's most reliable performers during a pivotal time in professional wrestling. Though he loses the match by countout, Valentine retains his cherished Intercontinental Championship through the Champion's Advantage rule, a detail that only adds to his reputation as one of wrestling's craftiest competitors. This moment at the Showcase of the Immortals represented the pinnacle of Valentine's career. Yet this storied Intercontinental title was destined for desecration, as Valentine would soon invoke the champion's most sacred taboo of destroying the very crown he'd fought so fiercely to possess. Born Jonathan Anthony Wisniewski on September 20th, 1951, Greg Valentine was destined for the squared circle. As the son of legendary wrestler Johnny Valentine, young John Jr. grew up watching his father captivate audiences across the territories. The elder Valentine was known for his incredibly stiff wrestling style and legitimate toughness, attributes that would later become hallmarks of his son's in-ring persona. Greg's journey into professional wrestling began in 1970 when he trained under the watchful eye of Stu Hart in the infamous Dungeon. The harsh training grounds of Calgary would prove instrumental in forging Valentine's hard-hitting style before cutting his teeth in various territories throughout the 1970s. The man who would become the Hammer first skirted his father's legendary shadow, adopting the moniker Babyface Nelson, before finding his footing as Johnny Fargo alongside the seasoned Don Fargo. Together they carved their own path through the territories, their partnership birthed in the smoke-filled arenas of the National Wrestling Federation before the dust of Texas rings would call them southward. Greg's path took a labyrinthine turn in 1974 as he ventured to Florida's sun-soaked territory and finally embraced his birthright as Johnny Valentine Jr., determined to honor the thunderous echoes of his father's reputation. Yet the Byzantine politics of the squared circle would soon decree that this prodigal son become a kayfabe brother instead, transforming into Greg the Hammer Valentine. For in wrestling's carnival logic, having a grown son in the ring might tarnish the fearsome aura of Johnny Valentine, whose legitimate tough guy mystique remained one of the business's most valuable illusions. Moving to Mid-Atlantic Championship Wrestling, Valentine teamed with Ric Flair to capture the NWA World Tag Team Championship twice. Their reign began by defeating Gene and Ole Anderson, leaving Gene stretchered out, but ended on May 8, 1977, in a steel cage loss to the Andersons at the Charlotte Coliseum. Valentine's first stint with the World Wrestling Federation came the next year in 1978, where he was immediately thrust into a feud with Chief Jay Strongbow. Under the calculating guidance of the Grand Wizard, Valentine metamorphosed into wrestling's remorseless orthopedic nightmare, a cold-eyed technician who was given the gimmick of meticulously breaking his opponent's legs with the cruel precision of a medieval torture master. However, it wasn't until after 2 more stints in Mid-Atlantic and his return to the World Wrestling Federation in 1984 that the Hammer would truly leave his mark on the company. A day that would echo through the hallowed corridors of wrestling lore, September 24, 1984, became the stage for Valentine's crowning achievement in London, Ontario. A masterclass in psychological warfare as he systematically dissected Santana's vulnerable knee with predatory focus. The cruel poetry of the match reached its crescendo when Santana, arms raised in premature triumph after what he believed was the winning pin, found his celebration transmuted into despair as Valentine, ever the opportunist, seized upon this moment of jubilation to snap-roll his unsuspecting prey into a devastating pinfall. Yet the Hammer's symphony of suffering wasn't complete until he punctuated his victory by ensnaring his fallen adversary in the figure-4 leglock, a final sadistic flourish that left Santana writhing in agony while Valentine clutched his newly won Intercontinental Gold with malevolent satisfaction. In what became wrestling's grandest stage, the inaugural Wrestlemania at Madison Square Garden bore witness to Valentine's Intercontinental title defense against the charismatic Junkyard Dog, a contest where the Hammer's nefarious tactics initially secured him a tainted victory by illegally leveraging the ropes. But fate and a vengeful Tito Santana conspired to unravel Valentine's deceit, with Santana's revelation to the referee transforming the Hammer's moment of triumph into a tactical retreat, as the champion chose to forfeit the battle via countout while retaining his precious championship. But like a phoenix rising from the ashes of his shattered knee, Tito Santana ultimately exorcised his demons within an unforgiving steel cage match, where 285 days of Valentine's tyrannical reign finally crumbled before the righteous fury of the restored champion. Furious over losing the Intercontinental Championship, Valentine obliterated the belt inside the steel cage, a dramatic act that cleverly doubled as a pre-planned unveiling of the Federation's sleeker, modern replacement. The destruction wasn't mere fury, it was a masterstroke of storytelling, seamlessly blending chaos with calculated promotion. In late 1985, Valentine formed an alliance with Brutus Beefcake, creating the duo known as the Dream Team. Under the management of luscious Johnny Valiant, the pair captured the Tag Team Championships from the US Express on August 24, 1985. The Dream Team's reign lasted nearly 8 months until April 7, 1986, where WrestleMania 2 saw Valentine and Beefcake relinquish their titles to the British Bulldogs. This defeat would eventually lead to the dissolution of the Dream Team, with Beefcake turning face after Valentine and manager Johnny Valiant abandoned him during a match. This period saw Valentine transition into various significant programs, including a memorable feud with Don Muraco that began after Valentine attacked Muraco's manager, Billy Graham. Valentine then targeted rugged Ronnie Garvin, a feud that culminated in a retirement match on Superstars in which Valentine prevailed. By now, Valentine had introduced the Heartbreaker, a devious shin guard he cunningly rotated to amplify the excruciating torque of his figure-4 leg lock. Not content with mere legwork, he brazenly repurposed it on his arm to deliver devastatingly enhanced elbow drops, turning a piece of gear into a vicious weapon. In 1990, Valentine formed another notable tag team, this time with the Honky Tonk Man as Rhythm and Blues. Managed by Jimmy Hart, the duo embraced an Elvis-inspired gimmick that, while not as successful as the Dream Team, showcased Valentine's ability to adapt his character. At Survivor Series, Rhythm and Blues joined the $1 Million Team, featuring the debuting Undertaker to face Dusty Rhodes' Dream Team, with the $1 Million Man emerging as the sole survivor. Rhythm and Blues feuded with the Bushwhackers and the Hart Foundation, earning title shots but being eclipsed by the Legion of Doom's dominance. While the Hart Foundation defended their titles against Valentine and Honky in opening matches, the Legion headlined alongside Demolition and the Ultimate Warrior in 6-man tag battles. The early 1990s saw Valentine's role in the Federation begin to diminish, though he remained a valuable member of the roster. He participated in the 1991 Royal Rumble, lasting an impressive 44 minutes before being eliminated. Then came a face turn and subsequent feud against Earthquake, which included his defeat at WrestleMania 7, before losing again at SummerSlam, this time at the hands of Erwin R. Shyster. In the 1992 Royal Rumble for the vacated championship, he lasted 4 minutes before being eliminated by the Repo Man. His Federation tenure quietly ended later that month with a victory over Skinner at a January 25th house show in Chicago. Valentine's contributions to the Federation during the 1980s wrestling boom cannot be overstated. While larger-than-life characters like Hulk Hogan and Randy Savage captured the imagination of casual fans, Valentine provided the promotion with a credible, serious competitor who could work with anyone and deliver quality matches. His reign as Intercontinental Champion helped establish that title as the Workers' Championship, setting a standard for in-ring excellence that future champions would strive to maintain. Today, wrestling historians and fans look back on Valentine's career as representative of a different era in professional wrestling, one where technical ability and toughness were paramount. His matches against Tito Santana, particularly their heated battles over the Intercontinental Championship, stand as testament to his ability to tell compelling stories in the ring. The date is March 29, 1987. The atmosphere in the Pontiac Silverdome is electric, the building vibrating under the weight of over 93,000 screaming fans. The crowd is whipped into a fever pitch, awaiting the spectacle that is WrestleMania 3. The air is thick with anticipation, the electric buzz of excitement palpable, and as the camera pans across the venue, it's clear this event is unlike any other. The scale, the energy, and the magnitude are all-consuming. Yet amidst the grand spectacle, one name looms large, the Honky Tonk Man. Dressed in his iconic rhinestone-studded jumpsuit, an ostentatious mockery of rock and roll glamour, the Honky Tonk Man makes his entrance, not just as a competitor, but as an embodiment of wrestling's most refined form of villainy. His mere presence is enough to draw the ire of the crowd, a testament to the character he has cultivated over time. As he struts into the ring, there is no doubt in anyone's mind. This is a man who knows how to control an audience, how to command the spotlight, and how to provoke with calculated precision. On this night, at the grandest stage of them all, the Honky Tonk Man is not just a character in a match. He is the epitome of wrestling's most captivating and frustrating villain. In the ring, he faces Jake the Snake Roberts, another character driven by a dark menace, But tonight, Roberts is outmatched. Accompanied by his manager Jimmy Hart, the Honky Tonk Man has a clear advantage. But it's not just his manager that sets him apart. It's his uncanny ability to generate heat, to elicit a reaction, to bend the very nature of what it means to be a heel in professional wrestling. In one of the more memorable moments of the evening, after a match that sees the Honky Tonk Man use every trick in the book to escape with a controversial victory, he finds himself narrowly avoiding Jake Roberts' wrath as the legendary Alice Cooper looks on, his snake Damien draped across his shoulders. The crowd's reaction is deafening, and the Honky Tonk Man, once again, proves that he has mastered the art of the heel. To understand how the man-born Roy Wayne Ferris became one of the most hated figures in wrestling history, we have to look at his origins, his early days in the business, and the key turning points that would lead him to become a WWF legend. Born on January 25, 1953, in the small town of Bolivar, Tennessee, Wayne Ferris launched his wrestling career in 1977 in Malden, Missouri, where he teamed with his training partner, Coco B. Ware, under the guidance of promoter Henry Rogers. By 1978, he had transitioned to Memphis Wrestling, initially performing as a jobber, before establishing himself as Dynamite Wayne Ferris, competing in various southern cities like Birmingham and Pensacola. His breakthrough came when he formed the tag team, the Blonde Bombers, with Larry Latham in Florida Championship Wrestling, a pairing orchestrated by Jerry Briscoe. The duo later returned to Memphis, adding Sergeant Danny Davis as their manager to further cement their notoriety. The Blonde Bombers ignited intense rivalries with beloved teams across Tennessee, splitting their time between Nick Gullis's Nashville territory and Jerry Jarrett's Memphis promotion. Their legacy was cemented with the chaotic Tupelo concession stand brawl against Jerry Lawler and Bill Dundee, a moment etched in wrestling lore. Throughout the early 1980s, they carved a path of championship glory in various promotions, dominating both singles and tag team divisions. In 1982, Ferris debuted for Stampede Wrestling in Calgary, where he unveiled the Honky Tonk Wayne persona, a charismatic homage to Elvis Presley, complete with slicked-back hair, sideburns, and a signature guitar. Teaming with Ron Starr, he captured the Stampede Wrestling International Tag Team Championship twice, later claiming the same title alongside Cuban Assassin. Honky's crowning achievement came on June 20, 1986, when he defeated Bad News Allen to win the Stampede North American Heavyweight Championship. The reign was cut short as the title was vacated upon his departure to the WWF later that year, marking the beginning of a legendary career. The Federation introduced Honky Tonk Man's character with a flurry of promos on their new syndicated programs, beginning with a bold promise on the debut episode of Superstars to tap dance on the head of Paul Orndorff. Honky's televised debut came on Wrestling Challenge on September 28, 1986, where he defeated Terry Gibbs, with none other than champion Hulk Hogan, endorsing him as a fan favorite. After his house show debut against Intercontinental Champion Randy Savage on October 8, 1986, Honky faced marquee opponents like Savage and Jake Roberts, culminating in a televised bout against Savage, which ended in a count-out loss. Fan reactions to Honky Tonk Man were tepid at best, prompting the Federation to shift gears with a series of promos alongside Jesse the Body Ventura, where Honky sought a vote of confidence from the audience. Emulating Andy Kaufman's condescending style, he mocked fans during his plea, further souring their opinion. By November 22, 1986, the vote results were overwhelmingly negative, solidifying his transformation into a brash villain under the guidance of Jimmy Hart, now billed as Colonel, in a nod to Elvis Presley's iconic manager. Honky Tonk Man's first major feud erupted with Jake the Snake Roberts, who was transitioning into a fan favorite. The rivalry escalated when Honky ambushed Roberts on the snake pit, smashing a guitar over his back, an incident mired in controversy. Roberts claimed the guitar was real, not gimmicked, and caused a severe injury that led to his reliance on painkillers, though Honky and others have disputed this, citing Roberts' prior substance abuse issues. Their heated feud culminated at Wrestlemania 3, where Honky secured a tainted victory by using the ropes, only for Roberts and Alice Cooper to retaliate, unleashing Damien, Roberts' Python, on Honky's manager, Jimmy Hart. On June 13, 1987, Honky Tonk Man defeated Ricky the Dragon Steamboat on Superstars to claim the Intercontinental Heavyweight Championship, using the bottom ropes for leverage to secure a controversial pinfall victory. Originally, Butch Reed was slated to win the title, and Honky was intended to serve as a transitional champion. However, after Jake Roberts failed multiple drug tests, Honky's reign was extended, ultimately becoming the longest in the title's history. In a later interview, Honky credited Hulk Hogan for advocating on his behalf during an impromptu meeting with Vince McMahon, swaying McMahon's initial plans and securing Honky's pivotal championship opportunity. To retain his Intercontinental Championship, Honky Tonk Man often resorted to deliberate countouts or disqualifications against challengers like Billy Jack Haynes, Bruno Sammartino, and George the Animal Steele. By September 1987, Macho Man Randy Savage, in the midst of a heroic turn, began targeting Honky after Honky proclaimed himself the greatest intercontinental heavyweight champion of all time and disparaged past title holders, especially Savage. Their rivalry reached a peak on the October 3, 1987 episode of Saturday Night's Main Event, where interference from Jimmy Hart's Hart Foundation saved Honky from defeat. The match's chaos escalated when Miss Elizabeth brought Hulk Hogan to Savage's aid, forming the legendary Mega Powers, and the feud deepened as Honky made repeated advances toward Elizabeth, culminating in their final grudge matches in steel cage bouts ahead of WrestleMania 4. Honky's next major rival was Brutus the Barber Beefcake. Their feud, which began at WrestleMania 4, where Beefcake had Honky in a sleeper hold before Jimmy Hart caused a disqualification, intensified as Beefcake vowed to cut Honky's prized ducktail hair, a promise he echoed in fiery promos. Honky countered with Peggy Sue, a mysterious valet often portrayed by Jimmy Hart in drag, while Beefcake retaliated with Georgina, played hilariously by George the Animal Steele. Scheduled to defend his title against Beefcake at SummerSlam 1988, Honky faced a last-minute twist when Beefcake was sidelined by Ron Bass, leading to a surprise challenge from the Ultimate Warrior, who demolished Honky in 31 seconds to claim the title and end his historic 454-day reign, the longest in history until Gunther surpassed it in September 2023. Teaming with Greg Valentine as Rhythm and Blues, the duo made a splash at WrestleMania 6 by arriving in a pink Cadillac, driven by future Hall of Famer Diamond Dallas Page. After memorable bouts against teams like the Hart Foundation and the Legion of Doom, they joined the $1 Million Team at Survivor Series 1990, which featured the debut of The Undertaker. Honky concluded his WWF tenure as a color commentator on Superstars, alongside Vince McMahon and Roddy Piper, before departing in January 1991. In the years following his WWF departure, Ferris wrestled on the independent circuit and briefly in WCW before making a return to the Federation in 1996. After leaving again in 2001, he spent nearly 2 decades spreading the Honky gospel across the independent wrestling scene. His legendary career was immortalized with his induction into the WWE Hall of Fame in 2019. The Honky Tonk Man's ability to craft a character that was as loathed as it was entertaining made him a central figure in the golden era of professional wrestling. Honky was more than just a wrestler. He was an entertainer, a provocateur, and a villain who knew how to generate heat in a way that few others could ever match. Today, Wayne Ferris may be retired, but the legacy of the Honky Tonk Man lives on, cemented in the hearts and minds of wrestling fans everywhere. His contribution to the world of professional wrestling remains undeniable, as he showed that the power of the villain could elevate the sport to new heights. For every good guy, there must be a bad guy, and the Honky Tonk Man was the bad guy that everyone loved to hate. The date is March 29, 1987. The Pontiac Silverdome trembles with anticipation, a cathedral of American spectacle where mythology collides with raw human drama. Nikolai Volkoff stands center ring, a towering embodiment of Cold War antagonism, his muscular frame draped in the red and yellow of the Soviet flag, an intentional provocation designed to ignite the collective fury of over 93,000 passionate wrestling fans. Beside him, the Iron Sheik, another foreign proxy warrior, represents a different strain of international villainy. Together, they are more than wrestlers. They are living, breathing geopolitical metaphors, weaponizing the deep-seated tensions of a world perpetually balanced on the razor's edge of nuclear confrontation. When Volkoff's resonant baritone begins the Russian national anthem, the arena transforms. His performance is not merely a musical interlude, but a psychological warfare tactic, a deliberate assault on American patriotic sensibilities. Each note becomes a calculated dagger, a sonic challenge to the very notion of national pride. The crowd's response is instantaneous and volcanic, a cascading wave of boos that threatens to overwhelm the arena's structural integrity. This was wrestling as political theater, with Volkoff as its most compelling provocateur. Tonight, Nikolai Volkoff and the Iron Sheik, accompanied by their manager Slick, will face the Killer Bees. As Volkoff begins singing the Soviet national anthem, Hacksaw Jim Duggan storms the ring with his 2x4 adorned with an American flag, declaring that Volkoff would not disgrace the land of the free and the home of the brave. Duggan's antics escalated into chaos when he struck the Iron Sheik with his 2x4 during a camel clutch, prompting a disqualification victory for Sheik and Volkoff, further cementing their legendary status in the world of professional wrestling. But how did we get here? Long before he became the Soviet strongman who would electrify wrestling audiences across America, Josip Hrvoje Peruzovich, who would later become Nikolai Volkoff, was born in Split, Yugoslavia on October 14, 1947. His early life was a canvas painted with complexity, a narrative far more nuanced than the cartoonish Soviet villain he would eventually portray. Growing up in post-World War II Yugoslavia, young Nikolai was introduced to physical culture through weightlifting. His imposing physique was not a wrestling construct, but a natural evolution of his athletic journey. Before wrestling became his canvas, he was an accomplished weightlifter, representing Yugoslavia in international competitions, a detail that would later inform his extraordinary in-ring strength and authenticity. In 1967, seeking opportunities beyond the constraints of communist Yugoslavia, Volkoff immigrated to Canada. This was not merely a geographical transition, but a profound personal metamorphosis. He understood, even then, that reinvention was an art form, a lesson he would masterfully apply in professional wrestling. Trained in Calgary by the legendary Stu Hart, he made his US debut in 1970. The Soviet Volkoff persona, first portrayed by Croatian-born Steve Gobrokovic, was later inherited and immortalized by Josip. This initial US debut came in Vince McMahon Sr.'s Worldwide Wrestling Federation as Beppo Mongol, teaming with Newton Tatry under the guidance of Captain Lou Albano. The duo won the International Tag Team Championship, but after losing the unified titles over a year later, Peruzovic departed the federation to forge a singles career as Nikolai Volkoff. Volkoff then returned in 1974, battling the legendary Bruno Sammartino in a sold-out Madison Square Garden match that ignited a fiery feud, with arenas across the Northeast packed to witness their clashes. By 1976, he briefly donned a mask as the Executioner, joining Killer Kowalski and Big John Studd to capture the World Tag Team Championship, though the title was vacated due to outside interference. Reverting to his Volkoff persona, he thrilled fans by crushing apples with one hand as a symbol of his dominance, later challenging Bob Backlund during his reign as champion. In late 1974, Volkoff transitioned to the AWA, adopting the name Boris Brezhnikov, under the management of Bobby the Brain Heenan, though his Soviet powerhouse persona remained intact. Between 1977 and 1983, he competed internationally in Japan for both New Japan Pro Wrestling and All Japan Pro Wrestling, before joining Cowboy Bill Watts' Mid-South Territory in 1983. By the mid-1980s, Volkoff was at the height of his powers. Having returned to the now renamed World Wrestling Federation in July 1984, he was paired with the Iron Sheik, forming one of the most iconic heel tag teams in wrestling history. Managed by the flamboyant and sharp-tongued, classy Freddie Blassie, Volkoff and the Sheik personified Cold War anxieties in the ring. Volkoff's theatrical rendition of the Soviet national anthem before matches, followed by the Iron Sheik's infamous Iran No. 1, Russia No. 1 proclamation, electrified audiences, drawing deafening jeers from American fans. Their crowning achievement as a tag team came on March 31, 1985, at the inaugural Wrestlemania, where Volkoff and the Sheik defeated the fan-favorite US Express to capture the tag team championships. The finish was emblematic of the era. Blassie's cane was instrumental, a reminder of the heel's propensity for bending the rules. This victory not only secured their place in WrestleMania history, but also showcased Volkoff's ability to embody the archetype of the foreign antagonist. Though their reign as champions lasted only 3 months, the duo's ability to generate heat made them perennial contenders. The same year, Volkoff transitioned to singles competition, where he began challenging none other than Hulk Hogan, the world heavyweight champion. Their encounters, including a notable flag match on Saturday night's main event, were exercises in theatrical storytelling. Hogan, the all-American hero clad in red and yellow, was the perfect foil to Volkoff's Soviet persona. These matches elevated Volkoff's profile while reinforcing Hogan's legendary status. By late 1985, Volkoff entered a heated rivalry with Corporal Kirchner, a former paratrooper for the 82nd Airborne Division. The feud was rich in symbolic overtones, with Kirchner embodying patriotic American ideals and Volkoff representing the looming Soviet threat. Their clash at Wrestlemania 2 was a continuation of the Cold War narrative within the squared circle. This flag match, held during the Chicago portion of the event, saw Kirchner finally triumph by wielding Blassie's cane, a poetic irony that added depth to their storyline. In the fall of 1986, Volkoff's journey took another turn as his longtime manager Freddie Blassie began to phase out of an active role. The storyline saw Blassie sell half of his managerial stable to the charismatic Slick, known as the Doctor of Style. This transition marked the beginning of a new chapter for Volkoff and the Sheik, who continued their campaigns against newcomers like Hacksaw Jim Duggan. Their encounter at WrestleMania 3 became one of the era's most iconic moments, not for the match itself, but for Duggan's dramatic interruption of Volkoff's anthem performance. The crowd erupted as Duggan stormed the ring with his trademark 2x4, epitomizing the Federation's penchant for blending patriotism with high drama. By 1987, Volkoff was paired with Boris Zhukov, an American wrestler rebranded as a fellow Soviet. Together, they formed the Bolsheviks, a tag team steeped in Cold War imagery. While their performances lacked the championship success of Volkoff's earlier partnership with the Sheik, the Bolsheviks were integral in advancing the Federation's narrative machinery. Their feud with the Powers of Pain and subsequent rivalry with the Bushwhackers solidified their role as mid-card villains, often serving as comic relief. At WrestleMania 6, the Bolsheviks etched their place in trivia lore by losing to the Hart Foundation in a mere 19 seconds, a stark reminder of how the Federation utilized them to elevate other teams. The fall of the Bolsheviks in 1990 marked a profound shift in Volkoff's career. As geopolitical realities transformed, culminating in the dissolution of the Soviet Union, Volkoff's character underwent a remarkable reinvention. In a storyline that resonated with audiences, Volkoff publicly severed ties with Zhukov and began singing the Star-Spangled Banner to raucous applause. This dramatic babyface turn saw Volkoff embrace American ideals, effectively transforming his character from an antagonistic Soviet strongman to a symbol of reconciliation. His new role led to a feud with Sergeant Slaughter, who had adopted a controversial Iraqi sympathizer gimmick. This feud culminated in Volkoff's participation at Survivor Series 1990, where his team emerged victorious, signaling his triumph as a reformed character. By the end of 1990, Volkoff departed the Federation, his character arc a poignant reflection of real-world transformations. He made sporadic returns, including a surprise appearance at the 1992 Royal Rumble, but his time as a central figure in the Federation had passed. On February 3, 2005, Nikolai Volkoff was named among the illustrious inductees for the WWE Hall of Fame's class of 2005. With his formal enshrinement taking place on April 2nd at the Universal Amphitheater in Los Angeles. Introduced by the legendary Jim Ross, Peruzovich eventually passed away at home on July 29, 2018, at 70 years old, just days after his release from a Maryland hospital where he had been treated for dehydration and other complications. His legacy transcends mere athletic achievement. Volkoff represented a generation of performers who understood wrestling as a sophisticated narrative medium, a place where athletic performance, political commentary, and pure entertainment could coalesce into something profoundly meaningful. In the pantheon of professional wrestling, he was more than a performer. He was a living, breathing narrative device who understood that the ring was a stage where personal and political mythologies could be explored, challenged, and ultimately celebrated. May he rest in peace.